Hi, I'm Lavinia with the MoE, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview of our update to TG6. And before I continue, I wanted to say, at the end of it, I won't really be entertaining any questions because Amy and Annette will be coming up and showing a lot of scenarios, and those scenarios will probably answer a lot of the questions that you might have. Okay. So, also, I'm kind of battling a sinus cold, so bear with me, please. The document is actually still encompasses the same policy of protecting our future resources. So it really, the policies haven't changed that much. It's just been restructured to be more clear. And in fact, we restructured it a while ago on one of our kind of first updates to it. And I've been using it ever since, that I kind of forget the one that you're using because it's that much more clear. And we've emphasized the assessment of current and future water uses. And we do that by, you first evaluate, your current and future drinking water use. Then you go and evaluate the current and future irrigation and livestock use, and then the current AW use, because we don't have a future AW use, and then you evaluate bedrock aquifers. And what's really nice about this new document that's hopefully to be posted soon, it includes guidance on the definition of natural confining barrier and the assessment of hydraulic properties. And that guidance came about because of questions from our practitioners. I think I keep doing it the wrong way, sorry. Oh, there they are. Okay, so we had this old flow chart in it, which was actually quite incorrect, and we've replaced it with that, and we'll put it in the new document, and gosh, I hope I can remember which way. Yes, and then we added irrigation and livestock watering use flow charts and aquatic life water use flow charts, and you've seen them. They're already posted up there, and they've been really helpful, I think. I've heard nothing but good news. So for under the changes to the evaluation of drinking water use, it's still the same for current. When you evaluate current DW use, it's still 500 meters from a nearby water well or surface water intake. But we added, you can exempt shallow aquifers if your current wells are within 500 meters, but drawing from a deeper confined aquifer that have a natural confining barrier. And I bolded the natural confining barrier because the new document actually emphasizes that barrier more, because we've been realizing that people haven't been investigating the barrier, the presence of a barrier as often as they should. So it's really emphasized in the new document. Under future drinking water use, we put the evaluation of presence of multiple aquifers right at the front. It's no longer at the end of the document. So, you have to evaluate whether there's a suitable aquifer with yield or a suitable K or the natural background quality, water quality. These are all considered drinking water aquifers. And we've put this in. Where information is unavailable or inadequate to demonstrate an absence of drinking water aquifers below a site, drinking water aquifers are considered to exist. And we did that because we realized some people were just limiting the presence, whether a presence of an aquifer existed, to the depth of their investigation. And that might mean just 10 meters, even though like a quadrasand exists below it. And then you go and evaluate. So if you have a drinking water aquifer below your site, you need to evaluate the presence of a natural confining barrier. And here's something that's new, and I put it in red, and I probably saw you guys just pointing to it. You then evaluate unconfined saturated thicknesses and also water quality. But the new change is we used to have Unconfined aquifers that were on average less than 1 meter thick were not considered suitable for drinking water use. We're changing that to 2 meters to incorporate all those sites where you have fill on top of a clay, and you've created this aquifer that's in contaminated fill. And anyways, that's kind of a nice new change. Okay. Under current, to evaluate irrigation and livestock watering use, again, it's the same for current use, wells within 500 meters. But we didn't have this, although it was kind of implied, but we didn't have it before, that you can get a current, use exemption for wells within 500 meters drawing from deeper confined aquifers along with that natural confining barrier. Under future use, it's always been the same. This last sentence here has always been the same, but we've actually, I'll just read it. We say irrigation and livestock water uses apply to all groundwater located at sites with agricultural land use, unless it can be demonstrated that the geological unit where contamination occurs has a bulk hydraulic conductivity less than 10 to the minus 6 meters per second. So, So what we've said, we've removed basically the applicability of the future use for ALR lands that was in there before. So it's basically if you have a current agricultural use, future IW and LW will apply. And the reason for that is we were getting a few requests for determinations for non-conforming ALR lands, and we also have the realization that for most of those sites, drinking water will likely apply. Mm-hmm. Oh, good, I did it the right way. There's no change to the aquatic life water use. It's still within 500 meters of a receiving environment, aquatic receiving environment. And at that, you also bedrock aquifers, there's just more explanation around them. It really hasn't changed that much. It's still, if you have a current drinking water, and we've included irrigation or livestock water wells, if they're located in bedrock, that use will apply unless, that well is protected by a natural confining barrier. That was never actually stated in the document, but now it's going to be. But it was implied. It was implied. And then we have for the future use, you only have to evaluate whether there's future use for drinking, irrigation, or livestock, where groundwater or contamination basically above the standards extends to the bedrock into the bedrock. And and we've also added another sentence about aquatic life water use in bedrock. It's the same as unconsolidated sediments. It's always within 500 meters of an aquatic receiving environment. That was always implied. It's just more explicit in the new document. And then we've added some guidance to the document. And like I said, this was all because of questions that you guys came up with, and we had to come up with answers to them. We have the definition of the natural confining barrier. It's still the same. But we've had questions about how do you determine that your natural confining barrier, or your 5 meters, is free of contamination. And we've decided that you can limit it to soil samples. And for most situations, I would say, you'd have to be less than or equal to the commercial land use standards for Schedule 4 and 10, less than or equal to commercial land use soil standards for site-specific, whatever site-specific factor applies in Schedule 5, and less than the applicable water standard in Schedule 6 when there's no scheduled soil standards, and there's the example there. And the exception is DNAPL. For DNAPL, you must have both soil and groundwater samples to prove that your natural confining barrier is free of contamination. And the reason we did this was there were so many people that were drilling into these confining barriers, collecting samples, and maybe finding sodium was in their sample, and then having to drill a whole bunch more wells to assess the background for sodium. And you're not supposed to be drilling your confining barrier, up to a zoo, because then it defeats the purpose of this confining barrier. It's not protective anymore. Let's see. We've included this, the assessment, under assessment of hydraulic properties of equivalent thickness for a natural confining barrier. And many of you might have seen this already. It was presented at some of the CSAP workshops and the CSAP presentations before. So when you have a geological unit that has a bulk hydraulic conductivity of between 10 to the minus 7 and 10 to the minus 6, and that geologic unit is a minimum of 5 meters thick, you can use this equation to determine an equivalent thickness. And also, I was reminded yesterday that that whole equivalent thickness that you determine must be free of contamination as well. Okay. Another change, or what we've included for guidance, is for calculating bulk hydraulic K of a geological unit. We've had actually quite a few questions on this. And I believe Annette and Amy are going to have a scenario where they show you what to do with that. But in general, to determine bulk conductivity for water use, like determining yield, can use a geometric mean of for more than 5 wells. But we're a little bit more conservative for natural confining units, because they really need to show us that they're protecting deeper aquifers, and we use the 90th percentile. An important note, though, is that those wells must be spatially distributed across a site and located within the same geological unit. You kind of don't want 2 wells with 6 tests between them, and then you're determining stats on that. And I think, at the end of the guidance in the appendix, there will be some guidance on what we will look for when assessing requests for specifically drinking water use exemptions. And again, Amy and Annette's presentation will go into depth on that. But there's a whole list of criteria at the end that will help practitioners decide whether they could even get a determination of a drinking water use doesn't apply. And hopefully it'll be published soon. It's almost done. Thank you.